people would see as him as a, a very active agent and probably, good value for the money.
I mean, it's at least some transparency, isn't it?
King Charles has just handed Catherine a power no Princess of Wales has held in more than 100 years, and he did it without a single headline to mark the moment. It looks minor. It isn't. Behind that one quiet decision sits a pattern, a king steadily building the monarchy's entire future around his daughter-in-law.
With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the center ground.
One deliberate move at a time. And the closer royal watchers look, the more sharply they disagree about what it means. Is Charles securing the crown's next chapter, or pushing a recovering woman toward it too fast? What exactly is he preparing Catherine to become? The quiet shift. For most of the last 2 years, the story around Catherine was a story of absence. Illness pulled her out of public life, and the palace learned to plan around an empty chair. The engagements thinned, the appearances got rare, and for a while, the only thing anyone could say for certain was that nothing was certain. Then the tone shifted. As she moved into remission, her diary started to fill again, slowly, deliberately, one carefully chosen event at a time. She was back at Trooping the Color, in a coat dress that dominated the coverage for days. She walked in the Order of the Garter procession at Windsor beside William. She stood at the cenotaph on Anzac Day and laid a wreath in silence. And she greeted the Irish Guards on St. Patrick's Day as their colonel, remembering the name of a wolfhound mascot she'd met the year before. There was more going on than a woman easing back into old habits. She joined William to meet patients and staff at Charing Cross Hospital, then hosted a reception for the England women's rugby team as her first solo appearance of the year. She climbed for the Royal Marsden Cancer Charity, finishing a Peaks Challenge and quietly donating to a Wish charity for seriously ill children after meeting a young girl on the mountainside. And she started steering her work toward a whole new theme, the healing power of creativity, drawn from her own belief that immersing herself in nature and making things had helped her recover. Here's the thing, none of it looked dramatic on the surface, and that was the point. Every appearance was measured, chosen for meaning instead of volume, and everyone carried the same unspoken message. The Princess of Wales wasn't just going back to work, she was coming back on her own terms, to a role that was quietly getting bigger than the one she'd left behind. And the clearest proof of that didn't come from a podium. It came from a stack of paperwork. A new power. That paperwork was a royal warrant. Over the summer, King Charles gave his blessing for William and Catherine to become grantors of royal warrants, and the association that oversees them confirmed the couple now hold that authority in their own right. Sounds like a technicality, it's anything but. A royal warrant is the mark a business earns for supplying the royal household, the right to display the royal arms, and the words that signal a direct line to the crown. Until this change, only the king and the queen could hand them out. Now the future king and the woman expected to reign beside him can too. And here's the part that made royal watchers sit up. The last woman to grant a warrant while holding the title Princess of Wales did it back in 1910, right before her husband became king. Diana, who held the exact same title, was never given the privilege at all. So when it passed to Catherine, nobody read it as a courtesy. They read it as positioning, a slow, deliberate handover of the tools a future queen would need, placed in her hands years before the reign that would call for them. The couple wasted no time signaling how they'd use it. Palace sources described a plan to spend at least one engagement a month, spotlighting British businesses and the unsung community figures who almost never reach a royal stage. A deliberate push to showcase the best of the country, instead of running the usual round of official duties. Small thing on the calendar, big thing in meaning. It turns a ceremonial power into a practical one, and it puts the future queen at the center of how the crown chooses to notice ordinary people. So, this is the moment the story stops being about how Catherine is feeling and starts being about what she's being handed. Because the second a king starts passing the real tools of the crown to the next generation, the questions change and they get louder. If you're leaning in right now, wondering what a future built quietly around the Princess of Wales actually looks like, that's exactly the thread worth pulling. Do yourself a favor and subscribe before we go further, because the rest of this only gets sharper from here. and the moves Charles is making make a lot more sense once you can see the whole board. The popularity question. There's a reason Charles can afford to build this openly around Catherine, and it comes down to one number. On her 44th birthday, a national YouGov poll put her at the very top of the most positively viewed royals, ahead of William, ahead of everyone. Popularity isn't power, but inside a monarchy still steadying itself after years of scandal, estrangement, and loss, popularity is close to currency. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams has pointed out that Catherine doing more matters enormously precisely because she's so popular, and both Waleses are. Others have gone further, calling her the key to the whole family in the year ahead, the person people believe in when belief in the crown isn't guaranteed. And that's where the argument starts. When one person becomes the most trusted face of an institution, the institution starts to lean on that person. And leaning has a cost. The more the palace relies on Catherine, the more the shape of the next reign bends toward her. Not everyone who studies the monarchy thinks a crown should ever rest that heavily on one set of shoulders. To see why that worry is real, you have to look at what actually happens when one reign ends and the next begins. What precedent says? Here's what a lot of people get wrong. There's no secret ceremony that decides any of this. Most of it is settled by centuries of precedent, and precedent is blunt. When William becomes king, Catherine becomes queen. Not a ruling queen, a queen consort, the spouse of the sovereign, the exact role Camilla holds right now. That change is automatic in the sense that it flows from the marriage and the accession. The instant the throne passes to William, his wife's standing changes with it, and nobody has to sign a thing to make it happen. The role itself carries no governing power. A consort doesn't command, doesn't set policy, doesn't rule. What a consort does have is presence, influence, and the ability to shape how a reign feels to the public. And that's exactly the kind of quiet power Catherine has already been stacking up through her charities, her patronages, her chosen causes around childhood, mental well-being, and the healing side of creativity and nature. She's not waiting to be handed influence at the coronation. She's building it now, in plain sight, one project at a time, which brings us straight to the person that Rise is quietly rewriting the future for. The Camilla question. This is where it gets delicate, and where most of the online noise gets the facts flat wrong. When William becomes king, Camilla's future isn't settled by some dramatic removal. It's settled again by precedent. The widow of a king is traditionally styled Queen Dowager, a title that honors her years of service while making clear she's no longer the wife of the reigning monarch. She wouldn't become Queen Mother because that title belongs to the mother of the sovereign, and Camilla is William's stepmother, not his mother. The most likely, most historically consistent outcome is Queen Dowager. Even that isn't fully automatic, and here's the part that matters most. A Queen Dowager holds no constitutional function. That's not a punishment, that's just what the role is. It's the same distinction the late Queen Elizabeth II's mother lived inside for half a century, honored everywhere, ruling nowhere. Camilla would keep her dignity, almost certainly keep her charitable work across the more than 90 organizations she supports, and stay part of the family's public life if she wants to. What she wouldn't hold is governing power in the next reign, because a former consort never does. No document is needed to make that true. It's true by the nature of the crown itself. Where real discretion exists is in the details, and that's what commentators actually argue about. The exact title, the residence, the size of her public role, all of it falls to the new king to decide. Precedent leaves room for judgment, shaped by public feeling, by advice, and by personal preference. It's even possible, though thought unlikely, that Camilla could take a lesser style. Every one of those calls would offer an early hint of what kind of monarch William plans to be, and how he balances respect for tradition against a modern public's expectations. So, the real debate isn't Catherine rising while Camilla falls, like the two are locked in a duel. It's quieter than that, and more interesting. It's about how gracefully an institution handles the space between one queen and the next, and how much of that should happen in public, while everyone involved is still very much here. And the man deciding how visible to make it has a very particular idea of what the whole monarchy should look like. The slimmer crown. Long before he took the throne, Charles was known to want a leaner monarchy, a smaller core of working royals with clearer jobs, instead of a sprawling cast all competing for attention and money. The last few years pushed that vision forward, sometimes on purpose and sometimes by accident. Harry and Meghan stepped away. Andrew was stripped of his remaining titles. The working family got smaller almost by subtraction, and the weight of representing the crown landed on fewer people. In a slimmer monarchy, William and Catherine don't just matter more, they matter enormously, because there are fewer shoulders left to share the load. And there's a risk buried in that nobody at the palace likes to say out loud. A leaner crown is a more efficient crown, but it's also a more fragile one. Trim the cast far enough, and the whole show starts to depend on a small handful of people staying healthy, staying popular, and staying willing. Take any one of them out, and there's suddenly nobody standing in the wings. That's the logic behind everything Charles has been doing, handing the Waleses the power to grant warrants, positioning Catherine as a public anchor people trust, leaning into a media strategy built on carefully chosen family images that pull in hundreds of thousands of likes and a following in the millions. Even the move into Forest Lodge fits, a listed Georgian house tucked into a private corner of Windsor Great Park, close to the castle but separate from it, described as the family's forever home. Each move looks small on its own. Together they read as preparation, a king arranging the pieces of a handover so that when it finally comes, it comes without confusion. And the more he arranges, the more of that weight spills past Britain's borders. The world stage. The plans don't stop at home. There's been talk of William and Catherine returning to the United States, and an open invitation from Australia's Prime Minister for the couple to visit with their children, though nothing's been fixed. Charles and William have each been linked to separate American trips, described in reports as a coordinated charm, offensive tied to shifting global politics and trade. William's own visit has been connected to the Football World Cup that North America is hosting, and any trip by the reigning monarch would be the first British sovereign visit to the country in nearly 2 decades. Why does that land on Catherine's story? Because diplomacy is one of the crown's most visible jobs, and the couple's recent turns hosting visiting presidents at Windsor drew warm coverage. As the working family shrinks and alliances shift by the week, more of that diplomatic weight is expected to fall on William and Catherine. Every state occasion they take on is another rehearsal for a reign that hasn't started yet, and another reason the king's quiet prep looks less like sentiment and more like strategy. But there's one thing no palace can schedule, and it's the thing this whole plan keeps running into. Balancing act. Catherine's health and her own clear sense of exactly how much she's willing to give. She's been consistent, and the people around her have said the same thing on her behalf. Family first, health second. Everything else, including the enormous machine of royal duty, gets built around those 2 fixed points. Royal author Robert Jobson, speaking to Hello magazine, put it plainly, her diary is already filling up, but she won't go back to the old pace because she's learned that lesson. Those close to her have said the days of just powering through are done, that running on empty isn't an option, and that missing too much time with George, Charlotte, and Louis is a line she won't cross. The numbers back it up. In her last full working year before her diagnosis, she carried out well over 100 engagements. In the year she was ill, she dropped far down the family's appearance list, choosing a handful of meaningful moments over constant visibility. Even in remission, nobody expects a return to the old pace, a busier diary than the year before, yes, but a selective one, weighted toward passion projects instead of an endless run of ribbon cuttings and handshakes. And this is where the human stakes get real. Picture it from her side. She's a mother of 3 young children who's just come through cancer, being asked gently and constantly to carry more of an institution that's running short on people to carry it. Every hour she gives to the crown is an hour she doesn't give to George, Charlotte, and Louis. And she's said in her own way that she won't trade that time away lightly. The palace wants to lean on her harder. She's made it clear she'll give more, but not everything and not at any price. A monarchy that needs its most trusted face to do more, paired with a woman who now knows exactly how much she's prepared to do, is a balance no precedent and no paperwork can settle for anyone. It has to be worked out quietly, over and over, in real time, which is exactly why the king's plans have become an argument instead of an announcement. What comes next? So what are Charles's plans for Catherine once you strip the speculation away? They're not a secret decree behind a locked door. They're something slower and honestly more significant. a steady, deliberate move to put the Princess of Wales at the center of the monarchy's future, through real powers, real responsibility, and a level of public trust the family can't afford to waste. And the debate around those plans is just as real. It's an argument about pace, how fast you push a recovering woman toward the demands of a future reign. It's an argument about balance, how a slimmer monarchy shares its weight without breaking the few people left to hold it. And it's an argument about grace, how an institution honors the queen it has while getting ready for the queen it'll one day need. None of the big questions are settled. When the handover finally comes, it'll fall to William to decide the details Precedent leaves open, and to Catherine to define, on her own terms, exactly what kind of queen she wants to be. Charles has laid the groundwork with unusual care. What gets built on it is a story still being written, one careful decision at a time. And here's what makes this moment so unusual. Most handovers of royal power happen in the shadow of grief, in the hours after a monarch dies, with no time to plan and no way to prepare the public. What Charles is doing is the opposite. He's arranging the pieces while he's still very much on the throne, in daylight, where everyone can watch them move. That openness is what makes these choices feel like plans instead of accidents. And it's also what invites the debate, because a decision made in public is one the public feels entitled to weigh in on. A quieter king might have left all of this to chance. This one chose to shape it. And in doing so, he turned the future of the monarchy into a conversation happening right now, instead of a surprise waiting somewhere down the line. That's the real story hiding behind the headlines. Not a scandal, not a secret, but a king deliberately deciding, out in the open, who carries the crown next, and trusting the country to argue about it while he still can. So, follow this one closely, through the real developments, not the invented ones. If you want the documented moves as they actually happen, subscribe and stick with us for the next chapter of this story. And before you go, drop it in the comments. Do you think Charles is preparing Catherine at exactly the right pace, or asking too much of her too soon? We read every reply, and this is one where genuinely reasonable people land on opposite sides.